Hello everyone, I'm Katrina, and in this video I'm going to show you how to add e-commerce to your Genesis Child theme in WordPress. So I recently released another video on my YouTube channel where I walked you step by step from scratch, showing you how to create a website using the Outreach Pro Genesis Child theme. In that video we also went over how to add e-commerce to our website using the WooCommerce e-commerce plugin for WordPress. Since that time, I've gotten quite a few questions from some of you asking how to add e-commerce to other Genesis Child themes. The short answer is that it's exactly the same process, but I thought I'd create a separate tutorial specifically jumping right to the point in that video, in the previous video, that starts to talk about how to add e-commerce to your Genesis Child theme. So this particular video is an excerpt of the full-length video tutorial. I'll be sure to drop a link to the other video tutorial down below so that when you watch that video, you'll see how to get to this part where we are right here. So we're going to continue where we start adding e-commerce to our Genesis Child theme. So if that's what you're looking to do, you're in the right place. Let's get started. So if you made it this far, you should have a completely customized WordPress website using the beautiful Outreach Pro Genesis Child theme by StudioPress. Next up, the fun begins because we're going to be adding e-commerce features to our WordPress website and our Genesis Child theme using one of the top-rated e-commerce plugins for WordPress called WooCommerce. So to add WooCommerce to our website, we're going to go back to the dashboard, click on Dashboard. Then we're going to go down to Plugins and click on Plugins. From here, we're going to be adding a new plugin to our WordPress website. So I'm going to click on Add New. Then at the top, I'm going to add the WooCommerce plugin here in the search box and do a search for this by clicking on Search Plugins. At the top, we'll see here is the WooCommerce plugin. It has almost 5 stars, 4 stars actually, based on 679 ratings. We can see here it is built by WooThemes. I'm going to click on Install to install this particular plugin. Are you sure you want to install this? Yes, okay. And once WooCommerce has been successfully installed, I'm going to activate the plugin by clicking on Activate Plugin. Once a plugin has been activated, you'll have this message that says, "Welcome to WooCommerce. You're almost ready to start selling," and you can install the WooCommerce pages. So the next step is I'm going to click on this button to install WooCommerce pages. Once the WooCommerce pages have been installed, you'll have this message that says, "Welcome to WooCommerce 2.1. That is the most current version of WooCommerce at the time of this recording. Once the WooCommerce plugin has been installed and activated, the next step is we need to add another plugin to our WordPress website in order to connect our Genesis Child theme with WooCommerce. So to add that plugin, I'm going to go down to Plugins, hover over Plugins, and click on Add New. Next, here in the search box, I'm going to do a search for the Genesis Connect for WooCommerce plugin. I'm going to add that in the search box and click on Search Plugins. Here we'll see it at the top, Genesis Connect for WooCommerce. You can read more about it by clicking on Details. We can see that this is developed by StudioPress, so that is really great because it ensures that this particular plugin will work well with our Genesis Child theme. Next, I'm going to install this by clicking on Install Now. Are you sure you want to install this? Yes, okay. And once the plugin has been successfully installed, the next step is I'm going to click on Activate to activate the plugin. Now, when you activate the plugin, you're going to get this message that says, sorry, in order to use the Genesis Connect for WooCommerce plugin, you need to do the following. So here is what we need to do. We need to add the code below to our child theme's functions.php file. So I'm going to highlight this line of code, highlight it and copy it. Then we want to click on this link here to go back to our WordPress website, and we need to go to the functions.php file. So we can do that by going down to Appearance, hovering over Appearance, and clicking on Editor. Here on the right-hand side, we'll see the functions.php file, and this is the file that we need to add that line of code to. The only catch that I want to point out is sometimes when I am adding code to the functions.php file within the WordPress dashboard, sometimes actually it breaks, and that's not good because then the website pretty much breaks altogether, and then you have to replace this functions.php file with the original one that came with your Genesis theme file. So a much safer way to add custom functions, which is what we're about to do, is to create a custom functions file so that you have another file where you can add your functions to. So I created another video on my YouTube. I'll be sure to drop that link down below so you can check it out. But in this video, I show you how to safely customize your functions.php file in your Genesis child theme by creating a my_functions.php file. So back here on my website, we see there's actually two files that say functions. The functions.php file here is the one that comes with your Genesis child theme files and in the folder. And then down below you see here's the custom one that I created following the guide in this video. So in this particular video, in order to add that line of code for the WooCommerce Genesis Connect plugin to connect that, I'm going to be using this custom functions.php file. So I'm just going to click on my_functions.php. Then underneath the code right here where it says my custom functions, I'm going to paste the code that we just copied in the previous step, scroll to the bottom and click on update file to update my file. Once this line of code has been added to the myfunctions.php file, we're good to go because the Genesis Connect with WooCommerce plugin has been connected with WooCommerce. Next up, let's check out the WooCommerce settings by going over to the left-hand sidebar, hovering over WooCommerce, and clicking on Settings. Here within WooCommerce setting, you can check out all of these different tabs: General, Products, Tax, Checkout, Shipping, Accounts, and Emails to check out the settings for each of these sections. I'll be going over these later on in the video. For now, let's take a look at the general options within WooCommerce, starting with the base location. So right here, you want to choose what country you have. So here by default, it says the UK, so I need to change that because I'm in the US. I'm just going to click on that. Then we get a drop down list. You can see all the different countries listed here. So go ahead and choose your country. I'm going to choose the US and I'm in California, so I will choose the US, California. Also note that there are these question marks here which provide you, when you hover over them, with a really great tooltip that will tell you what each of these settings does. So as we see here, when I hover over this one, it says this is the base location for your business. Tax rates will be based on this country. Okay, so once I have my location set, then we can choose which locations we're selling to. Once again, when I hover over this, it says this option lets you limit which countries you are willing to sell to. I'm going to sell to all countries, but if you want to keep it within your country or specific countries only, then you would click on Sell to Specific Countries Only, and then you would choose your countries right here. So I'm just going to click on Sell to All Countries. Then if you want to enable a site-wide store notice text, you can click on this. I do not want to do that. I'm going to leave that unchecked. Then I'm just going to scroll down here to currency options. It says the following options affect how prices are displayed on your website. So as we see here, the currency is by default in sterling, pounds, and pounds. So I want to change that. As it notes again in the tooltip, it says this controls what currency prices are listed at in the catalog and which currency gateways will take payments in. So I'm going to change this from pounds to US dollars. So I'll just click on US dollars. And then here you can choose what position you would like the currency symbol to be displayed at. So I'll just leave it with the left-hand display. Then you can choose the thousand, separator, decimal, or number of decimals. I'm going to keep all of these as they are. Then I'm just going to scroll down and I'm going to click on this button here to save the changes. The great thing about WooCommerce is that most of the default settings right out of the box are exactly how I want them to be, so I'm not going to be making a lot of changes to the default settings. However, of course, for your store, you want to make sure that you do review each of the different settings to make sure that your unique store has the proper settings for your website. That said, I'm going to move on to the next tab, which are the product settings. So I'm going to click on products here. Here at the top, we'll see we have the product options listed down below. Again, I'm going to leave most of these defaults as they are. We have the product archive shop page, which should say shop if you followed the previous step and installed your WooCommerce pages, as we did earlier in this video. You should also see shop right here. When we hover over this particular question mark, it says this sets the base page of your shop. This is where your product archive will be. So when we click on this, you can choose some other page if you want, but I encourage you just to leave it as it is once again with the default that says shop. This will be your shop page. Then we can decide which products to display on the shop page. We can either show products or subcategories or both. Once again, I'm going to leave it with the default, which is simply to show the products. I'm going to leave all these defaults actually as they are. I'm not going to change them. Instead, I'm going to scroll down to where it says product data, and here where it says weight unit, you want to choose your weight unit. So as it says, this controls what unit you will define weights in. So I'm going to click on kilograms and just make it pounds. And then for dimensions, instead of centimeters, I will just put inches. Of course, for whatever weight unit and dimensions unit you would prefer, make sure that you set this according to your unique needs right here. I'm going to scroll down and leave all of these defaults as they are as well. And then here where it says product image sizes, this is an important one to look at. As it notes, these settings affect the actual dimensions of images in your catalog. The display on your website will still be affected by CSS styles. So here we have the catalog image dimensions, the single product image dimensions, and the product thumbnails. So here we can see the default dimensions for each of these different image types, and I'm going to be changing these image dimensions to make them a little bit larger. Keeping in mind that I've added a few images to my website, those are images that I'm displaying throughout the website in my blog posts and other parts of the site, but I do actually want to use those same images as products within my shop. As a result, when I change the dimensions here for the product image sizes, I'm going to need to regenerate the thumbnails of those images that are already in my media library. So first, let's go ahead and change the images here, then we'll regenerate the thumbnails. First, for catalog images, instead of 150 by 150, I actually want to make this 500 by 500. For the single product image, instead of 300 by 300, I want to make this 550 by 550. I'm going to keep it as a square for each of these. And then finally, for the product thumbnails, instead of 90 by 90, I want to make this 150 by 150. I prefer image sizes that are a little bit larger. Then I'm just going to scroll to the bottom and click on Save Changes to save the changes. Once the new settings have been saved, as mentioned, we need to regenerate the thumbnails. So I'm going to come down here to Plugins, click on Add New. Then I'm going to do a search for Regenerate Thumbnails and click on Search Plugins. Here it is at the top, Regenerate Thumbnails. I'm going to click on Install Now. Are you sure you want to install this? Yes, okay. And once a plugin has been successfully installed, I'm going to click on Activate Plugin to activate the plugin. Next up, I'm going to go to my media library right here by clicking on Media. And then the two images that I do want to regenerate, this chair and these lights, because both of these will be included as products in my store. So I'm going to click on both of these. Then I'm going to come up to the top and click on Regenerate Thumbnails, and then I'm going to click on Apply. Also note, you can simply hover over the actual product right here and click on Regenerate Thumbnails down below. So, okay, I'm going to do this in bulk though. I'm going to do them both at the same time. So I've got them both checked. Then I have Regenerate Thumbnails here. Then I'm going to click on Apply to start regenerating the thumbnails for those two products. Okay, once both products have been successfully regenerated, we're good to go and we can continue with our WooCommerce settings. So I'm going to go back to WooCommerce, hover over WooCommerce and click on Settings. Then next up are the taxes. Now taxes for everyone are very different, so I am not going to go over this right here. I'm just going to leave all of the defaults set up. But as mentioned, you can check out each of these different settings by hovering over the question mark and reading what the tooltip is to help guide you. Also, I want to note that you can also refer to the documentation at WooThemes, and I'll be sure to drop the link in this video so you can read all about setting up taxes in WooCommerce for your unique store. So, okay, going back to the WooCommerce settings page right here, I'm going to click on the checkout page. Here on Checkout Options, you can tell WooCommerce where to send your users to check out. So here we see, when I scroll down, we'll see the checkout pages. If you've been following along in this video, most likely you already created those WooCommerce pages, and if you did, then like we see right here, you should see Cart as the cart page, Checkout as the checkout page, and if you want to add terms and conditions to your website, you can create a page with terms and conditions, and then you can set that by selecting that page right here. I haven't created any terms and conditions yet in this video, and I don't plan on doing so. However, if you have a page called Terms and Conditions, this is where you would set that right here. Then scrolling down, we have all of our various payment gateways. As it notes, installed gateways are listed below. We can drag and drop gateways to control their display order on the front end. So for example, in this video, I'm going to be setting up the payment method as being PayPal. So I'm going to check that right here, and then I want to drag this to the top. So I'll just drag it to the top right there. And then I'm going to click on Save Changes to save the changes. Now note when I scroll back down to the bottom of the page where the payment gateways are, we see that there's a number of other payment methods that have been enabled. This purple checkbox right here refers to enabled payment methods. So direct bank transfer and check payment, I really do not want to have those two activated. I want to disable those actually. So in order to disable them, we can either click on settings right here for each one of these respective ones, or I can come to the top and here we can see them all listed right here. So these are all of the installed payment methods that come with your WooCommerce installation. I'll come back to disabling those in just a moment. I do want to note that when you head on over to the documentation at WooCommerce, you can see a page about the checkout process. I'll be sure to drop the link to this so you can check it out. And when we scroll down, you'll see here under Payment Gateways, it says learn more about premium payment gateway options here. So if any of the pre-installed payment methods do not work for you, if you have some other kind of payment method that you would prefer to use, you can check out all of the premium payment gateway options here. So I'm going to click on this. Then you can read more about the Premium Payment Gateway extensions. As it notes, WooCommerce has hundreds of payment gateway options to choose from, and you can just read through some of the important options to consider, and then if you want to review the full list of available premium payment gateway extension options, you can click on this link right here. When I click on that link, also note that there's a number of additional popular extensions, including WooCommerce bookings, product add-ons, which enable your customers to customize your products. If you want advanced shipping, there's a table rate shipping extension. And if you would like to easily create and manage recurring payments, you can check out the WooCommerce subscriptions extension here. Underneath these popular extensions, then we see the hundreds of other payment methods and gateways that you can use for your WooCommerce WordPress website. So I will be sure to drop a link once again to the payment gateways so you can check them out and you can set up the perfect payment gateway for your unique store. In this particular video, I'm going to be using the pre-installed payment methods, and specifically, once again, I'm going to be using PayPal exclusively. So I want to get back to disabling the other payment methods that are currently enabled, starting with this one. So when I click on this BACS, we can see here it is enabled. I'm just going to uncheck it, scroll to the bottom, and click on Save Changes to save my changes. Next, I'm going to click on the check option right here, and as we did in the previous example, I want to also disable this, so I'm going to uncheck that and click on Save Changes. Cash on delivery, I'll just click on that. This one is not enabled, so we're good to go. I'm just going to leave it as it is. And then finally, if you want to set up your e-commerce website with this Mijara, I might be saying that incorrectly, checkout, you could read more about that by clicking on this link that says Learn More. Okay, so I'm just going to leave it as PayPal. We can see when I go back to the checkout options now by clicking on checkout options. Now when I scroll to the bottom, the only payment method that has been enabled is the PayPal method. Next up, we need to configure our PayPal standard settings. We can do that in two different ways on this page. Either one, we can click on this button here that says Settings, or at the top there's a link here that says PayPal. We can click on that as well. So I'm going to click on PayPal here at the top. Next we'll arrive on the PayPal Standard settings page for WooCommerce, and as we can see at the top it says PayPal Standard works by sending your customer to PayPal to enter their payment information. So the great thing about PayPal Standard is that you and your customers both can be rest assured that all of the different payments are secure because the payments are taking place on PayPal, which is a secure website. You can read more about PayPal Standard here on paypal.com. I'll be sure to drop a link down below so you can check it out. This is a page with all the various frequently asked questions about Website Payment Standard, PayPal Standard. For more info about PayPal Standard and how to set it up within WooCommerce, as well as some issues that you may encounter when you're using PayPal Standard, I encourage you to check out the great documentation at woothemes.com. I'll be sure to drop a link to this page down below also so you can check it out. Back on our PayPal Standard settings page within WooCommerce, we want to make sure that Enable PayPal Standard is checked. So I'm just going to leave that box checked right there. By default, you should have a title and a description. You can customize these if you'd like, but I'm going to leave them as they are. Then the next step is we need to add our PayPal email as well as our receiver email. In most cases, these are the same. However, within your PayPal account, if you've set up a different receiver email from your account PayPal email, then you want to add that different receiver email down below. I have the same one, so I'm just going to add the same one for both the PayPal email as well as the receiver email. Also to note, here we have these question marks, so when you hover over each one of them, you'll get a tooltip that will tell you exactly what each of these different settings will do. So here it says when I hover over this particular PayPal email one, it says please enter your PayPal email address. This is needed in order to take payment. For the receiver email, once again, when I hover over this one, it says if this differs from the email entered above, it may be the same and then you can just disregard this, but if this differs, input your main receiver email for your PayPal account. This is used to validate your IPN request. So once again, I have the same one, so I'm going to leave them both there. Then I'm just going to scroll to the bottom and I'm going to click on Save Changes to save my changes. Next, we need to log into our PayPal account and we need to set up two different URLs within our PayPal account. Going back to the WooCommerce documentation on woothemes.com, we see that those two URLs are, number one, we need to set the PayPal notification URL with an example right here, and we also need to set up an auto return in our PayPal account, and there's an example of that URL right here. So let's take care of the first one, which is setting up the PayPal notification URL. To do that, I'm going to log into my PayPal account. Next, within my account, I'm going to go to My Account, and then I'm going to go to Profile, hover over Profile, and then I'm going to go to My Selling Tools. Next, here on the My Selling Tool page, I'm going to scroll down. I'm going to look for the link that says Instant Payment Notifications. As it notes here, it says Integrate PayPal Payment Notifications with my website. I'm going to click on Update right here on the right-hand side. Here on the Instant Payment Notification screen, IPN, you can read more about this by reading this section right here. We need to choose the IPN settings by coming to the bottom and clicking on this button that says Choose IPN Settings. Next, we need to add our notification URL in this field right here. Now, to find your notification URL, I'm going to go back to the WooThemes documentation, scroll down, and then here, once again, there's an example of the PayPal notification URL. So we want to highlight and copy this. So I'm just going to copy that. Then I'm going to go back to the notification URL field right here and paste that URL that I just copied in the previous step. And instead of using example.com, I'm going to use my own website URL. So you want to make sure that you just replace example.com with your own website domain. Then I'm going to click on this button here that says Receive IPN Messages Enabled. Once that is enabled and I have my notification URL, I'm going to click on Save to save the settings. Next, we'll go back to My Selling Tools by going to Profile, hovering over Profile, and clicking on My Selling Tools. Next, here on the Selling Tools options, we want to go down to where it says Website Preferences, bring customers back to my website after they pay with PayPal. And here in Website Preferences, we want to click on this link once again that says Update. At the top, we want to make sure that auto return is on, so I'm going to click on, and then we need to add our return URL. So going back to the PayPal documentations on woothemes.com, I'm going to scroll down, and here where it says auto return, there's an example of the URL we need to use. So I'm just going to highlight and copy this URL. Then I'm going to go back to my PayPal account and I'm going to paste the URL that I just copied in the previous step. Note that it says yoursite.com and I want to replace yoursite.com with my actual domain. So go ahead and make sure that you also replace this demo domain right here, yoursite.com, with your actual domain name. Once auto return button is on and the return URL has been added with your customized domain, then I'm just going to scroll to the bottom and click on Save to save the settings. Once the settings have been saved within your PayPal account, you're good to go with PayPal integration with WooCommerce on your WordPress website. If you have additional issues related to PayPal and integration, you can check out the frequently asked questions on WooThemes.com, and I'll be sure to drop a link to this page down below. Also, if you'd like to contact PayPal directly, you can check out their technical support page on PayPal.com, and I will also leave the link to this technical support page as well down below so you can check it out. Once you have everything ready to go and we've made all of our settings, then we're good to go on our payment method within WooCommerce and our WordPress website. Next, I'm going to move on to shipping. The shipping tab right here will give you all the different options you can set for your e-commerce WordPress website. Here at the top, I'm going to enable shipping, so I'm going to leave that checked. I do not want to enable a shipping calculator on the cart page. If you would like to add a shipping calculator on the cart page, you can leave this checked. I'm going to uncheck it though. Then I'm just going to scroll down and here we can see that free shipping is enabled. Here's this purple checkbox, but there's all these other different shipping methods that you can choose: flat rate shipping, international delivery, and local pickup. So I'm just going to make sure that this default is checked. Then I'm going to click on Save Changes to save the changes. As a quick side note, while I'm not going to go over in detail all the various shipping options within WooCommerce, I will drop a link down below so you can check out other shipping options in WooCommerce on WooThemes.com. In this video, as mentioned, I'm going to be using free shipping. When it comes to increasing sales on your e-commerce website, studies show that one of the best strategies you can employ is offering free shipping. On my YouTube channel, I have another video where I share data related to shopping cart abandonment and strategies that you can employ to increase your sales on your e-commerce website. So I'll drop that link down below as well so you can check it out. Back on our WordPress website, you can check out the settings for free shipping by clicking on this link that says Settings, or at the top, you can click on this link that says Free Shipping. Once I click on free shipping, then we arrive on the free shipping settings page, and I'm going to leave all the default options as they are. I'm not going to change anything. You just want to make sure once again that free shipping is enabled. Then we don't really need to save anything because everything has been saved, so I'm just going to continue to the next tab that is called Accounts. Here on the account pages settings, as it notes, these pages need to be set so that WooCommerce knows where to send users to access account-related functionality. So earlier in the video, we had created our WooCommerce pages. So by default, you should see My Accounts page showing up right here that says My Account. And then I'm going to leave all of these default endpoints as they are right here as well. So when we install WooCommerce and we set up those pages, all of these defaults are automatically added. So I'm just going to leave them all as they are. Then scrolling down, here are the registration options. So if you'd like to enable registration, you can do so. Once again, I'm going to leave all the defaults here. I'm not going to change anything. So the default enables registration on the checkout page, and it also displays returning customer login reminders on the checkout page as well. Finally, an automatic generated username from the customer email is created for the account. So once again, I'm not going to customize any of this. I'm going to leave all the defaults as they are. Then I'm going to move on to the Emails tab on the top right-hand side. Here within the email options settings, you can see all the various emails that WooCommerce will send to your customer at each different step within the order process. If you'd like to customize any of these emails, you can do so by clicking on each of these links at the top above. The main thing that you want to set up under email sender options is the from name. As it notes here, the following options affect the sender, email, address, and name used in WooCommerce emails. So WooCommerce will automatically generate these emails for you. You just need to make sure that you do add the from name so that your customer knows who the email is from. And And you also need to set your from email address. So I just added my name and my address here. Once again, if you'd like to customize any of these various emails, you can just click on each one of them and see what WooCommerce will be sending, and then you can adjust them right here within these fields. For a quick guide on how to set up customized emails within WooCommerce, be sure to check out this great tutorial here on woothemes.com. Here you can learn how to customize your WooCommerce emails and the email templates. So be sure to drop this link down below so you can check it out. Once all the settings within WooCommerce have been set up, now the fun part begins of adding products to our e-commerce WordPress website. So to add a new product to our e-commerce website, you can either go to the top in the toolbar, hover over plus new, and click on product, or on the left-hand sidebar, you can go down to products, hover over products, and then click on add product. So I'm just going to add product by clicking on this link right here. Here on the add new product page, the first step is we need to give our product a name. So for this particular product, I'm going to be adding a modern red chair as the product. So I'll just make the product name modern chair. Next, here in this white box, you can provide a description about your product. Once again, we have the visual tab as well as the text tab. I prefer working in the visual tab, so I'm just going to add some content right here, some demo content about this particular chair. Next, on the right-hand side, we have our product category. So to create a new product category, I'm going to click on this link that says Add New Product Category. Then for the product category, you just want to enter the name, and then once again, click on this button that says Add New Product Category. Once you've clicked on the button that says Add New Product Category, you'll see it up above, and it should be checked. Next, scrolling down, we have some product tags, so you can add some product tags right here, making sure that if you have more than one tag, you want to separate those tags with commas. So I'll just add my tags right here. And then once you have all the tags listed with a comma in between each one, go ahead and click on the Add button to add the product tags. Scrolling down a little bit further, you can add a product gallery if you have multiple images for this particular product, or at minimum, you should add a product image. So I'm going to set the product image by clicking on Set Product Image. Here we can see I already have the image here in my media library, so instead of uploading the file for this particular one, I'm just going to check this particular image. The title and the alternative text have already been added, so that's great. Then I'm just going to click on this button here that says Set Product Image. Once the image has been set, then we can check out the product data over here. This is going to be a simple product. It's just one color, one size, one price. So for that, we can see here that I'm going to leave it as simple product, but when I do click on this, you'll see the other options that you have. You can either create a group product, an external affiliate product, or a variable product if, for example, you have different colors or different sizes. This, once again, is one size fits all. It's one color, so I'm going to leave it as simple product. Also note that you can also add virtual products and downloadable products. I'm not going to be creating those right now. I'm just going to be adding this actual physical product, a chair. So I'm going to leave it as simple product. Then we can give it a regular price or a sale price. I'm not going to mark this one on sale. I'm just going to give it a regular price right here. Once the regular price has been set for the product, the next settings we can check out within WooCommerce include inventory settings, shipping settings, linked products, attributes, and advanced. When I click on inventory, for example, we can see here that if you'd like to manage stock, you can click this box right here to enable stock management. I'm not going to manage stock. I'm going to leave it as open. I'm also going to leave the other defaults as well, including stock status and allow back orders will be set to do not allow back orders. So once again, here are some question marks, which when I hover on top of them, I get a really cool tooltip that tells me exactly what these settings will do. I'm going to leave all the defaults, and then I'm going to move on to shipping. In this video, I'm using free shipping, so I'm not going to change any of the defaults right here. If you'd like to upsell or cross-sell products within your inventory catalog, you can do so by clicking on linked products. And then once you add more products to your site, you can search for them here, and you can link them or cross-sell them in this tab right here. Attributes we don't need right now because we're just selling this simple product with one size and one color. So we'll come back to attributes later when we're setting up a product with a number of variations. Finally, here in advance, if you have any special notes that you want to send to a customer for this product, you can set those notes right here. As I hover over this question mark, it says enter an optional note to send to the customer after the purchase. If you'd like to enable or disable reviews, you can do so by unchecking this box. Again, I'm going to leave the default checked so that reviews are enabled. Once you have the settings set up as you like them for the simple product, we can scroll down, and here you can add a product short description. This will be featured in the short description box right by the price on the product page. We'll see that in just a moment. So here I'm just going to add a short description right here in this box, and then we're all set and ready to go. We can come up to the top and click on Publish to publish our simple product. Once the product has been published, we can check it out by clicking on View Product here or clicking on this button that says View Product. So I'm just going to click on this link at the top that says View Product, and here we can see the product on our e-commerce website. Now I do want to note it looks okay, but there's one thing that's sort of missing. Here we see on the bottom our sidebar is hanging off the right hand side. Now we had already set up the Google Connect with WooCommerce plugin, and we had already completely finished that, but one thing that we did not actually do was we didn't actually activate it. So that plugin is really important. That will solve this breakage issue on the page where the sidebar shows up below the product info. So let's go ahead and turn on the Google Connect to WooCommerce plugin. So I'm going to go back to the dashboard, click on Dashboard. Then I'm going to go down to Plugins, click on Plugins. And then here we see down below, we see the Genesis Connect for WooCommerce plugin. We haven't yet activated it. So we went through all the steps for Genesis Connect for WooCommerce. However, we didn't activate it. So this is really important. So I'm going to click on Activate now. And now that the plugin has been activated, we can go back to our product by going to the product page. Let's see where that is, right here. Here on the left-hand sidebar, I'm going to click on Products. Then here we have our modern chair. I'm going to click on View to view the chair. And now we see we have our product on the left-hand side and our sidebar lining up really nicely on the right-hand side. So that looks so much better. So if you encounter that issue where the sidebar has fallen below the product information, it's most likely because you did not activate the Genesis Connect to WooCommerce plugin. Okay, so now we're good to go. Now we do have a couple customization changes to make within WooCommerce because I'm not really a big fan of this purple button, but we'll come back to the styling changes in WooCommerce a little bit later. Next up, let's add the shop page to our navigation menu at the top so anyone who comes to our e-commerce website can very easily find the shop page. So to add the shop page to the top navigation bar, I'm going to go to the dashboard by clicking on Dashboard. You can also go directly to Menus by clicking on Menus. So in the essence of time, I'm just going to click on Menus right here. Then here on the left-hand side, I'm going to click on Shop, Cart, and Checkout because I want to add all three of these e-commerce pages to the menu navigation so they're really easy to find. So once I click on these three pages, then I'm going to click on this button here that says Add to Menu, and then they'll show up at the bottom. Now I prefer having the shop page right at the beginning so it's front and center. It's very easy to read. It's the first thing that anyone would read in the lineup. So I'm just going to move shop to the top. Also, I'm going to move the cart page underneath the shop page and create a sub menu item. So I've just, as you can see, I just dragged it under and to the right of the shop page. I'll leave the checkout page as the last page in the lineup. Then I'm just going to click on Save Menu to save my menu. Now when I go to the home page by going up to the top and clicking on Visit Site, here we can see the e-commerce pages front and center here in our menu navigation. We've got the shop page, the cart sub-menu page, and the checkout over here on the right. When I click on Shop, then we'll see the beginning of our shop page filling out. Right now we've only added one item, so let's add a few more items to our shop and our product catalog. So the next product that I want to add will be a product that has many different variations of the same product. So to create a new product with variations, once again, I'm going to go up to the top, hover over plus new, and click on Product. Here on the Add New Product screen, I'm going to give the new product a name. So for this product, I'm going to be adding some artistic round lamps. So I will just call this Artistic Round Lamps as a title. Then here in this white box, you can give the product a description. So I'll just add a description in here. Then down below, I'm going to add a product category. by clicking on this link that says Add New Product Category, adding the name of the category, which in this case will be lighting, and then once again I'm going to click on this button one more time that says Add New Product Category. Now we can see the category that I've just created right here and the box is checked, so this particular product will be added to the lighting category. Then I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to give some product tags related to this product. Keeping in mind, if you have more than one tag, you want to separate each of the tags with a comma. Once you've added your tags separated with commas, go ahead and click on Add to add the new product tags. Down below, we can add images to a product gallery, or we can simply add a product image. In this case, once again, I'm just going to add a product image. We will create a product gallery in one of the next products we add to the site. So for now, I'm just going to click on Select Product Image. Then I'm going to click on Upload File to upload the file, select Files. Then I'm going to choose the file that I need and click on Open. And then WordPress will upload the image to my WordPress website. Here on the right-hand side, we can see the attachment details. And as we've done in the previous examples with images, it's always a good idea to add a title and an alternative text. So after adding a title and an alternative text, then you can click on this button that says Set Product Image. Once the image has been set, then you can continue with the theme SEO settings here on the left-hand side. I'm not going to cover this right now. I'm just going to move on. I'm going to keep the layout settings as they are, the default layout settings. And then down below where it says product data, instead of creating a simple product, this time we're going to be creating a variable product. So I'm going to click on this box right here, and then I get a drop-down box. We can see all the various product types once again. At the bottom we have variable products, so I'm going to click on that. Then you'll see that the dashboard here changes a little bit, and instead of adding a price here on the general tab, now we simply have the option to create a SKU. SKU stands for stock keeping unit. You can read more about it by hovering over this question mark right here, and it says SKU refers to a stock keeping unit, a unique identifier for each distinct product and service that can be purchased. So if you'd like to create stock keeping units or SKUs, feel free to do so. I'm going to skip this part. I'm not going to create a SKU for this particular variable product. Moving on, here we have our inventory tab once again. So if you'd like to manage stock, you can do so by clicking on this box, and then you can set the stock status, whether or not you want to allow back orders, and so on. Next we have shipping. Again, in this video I'm going to be featuring free shipping, so I'm not going to add anything in here. However, if you do want to create shipping based on pounds, dimensions, or class, you can do that here. Next, if you want to cross-sell or upsell your products, you can do so. We don't have enough products in our online catalog yet to upsell or cross-sell anything to. So I'm going to leave this as it is, but just keep in mind you can upsell and cross-sell once you have more products in your store uploaded to your WordPress website. Next up are attributes, and this is where we can start defining the type of product that we're selling on this particular product page. So attributes refer to things like color and size, whereas variations would be something like the actual color, red, blue, or green, or sizes of small, medium, and large. So first we need to set the attribute, and then we can set the variation. So there's several different ways to set attributes. We can either do so individually here by clicking on Add and creating a new attribute, or if you have an attribute that can be applied throughout many of your products, throughout your product catalog, then you can also create attributes here on the left-hand side underneath where it says products in the left-hand sidebar. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to save my draft over here. It's always a good idea to continue saving your draft to make sure that everything to date so far has been saved and you don't lose any of the changes that you've made. So I'm just going to save the draft. Then I'm going to come over here on the left-hand side and I'm going to create a new attribute by clicking on Attributes. As it notes at the top, attributes let you define extra product data such as size or color. So here for the name, I'm just going to give this a name of size. Then I'm going to scroll down and click on Add Attribute to add the attribute. Once attribute has been created, we'll see it here listed underneath name, and here we can see the one that I just created is called size. So on the far right hand side there's this little gear icon, and when I hover on top of it we'll get a tooltip that says Configure Terms. So I'm going to click on this button right here, which opens up a new box, and here we can start creating the new values for the attribute of size we just created. So here, for example, it says add a new size, so I'll just add small. Then I'm going to scroll down and click on add new size. Then we can see the first attribute value that we've added is small. Next I'll add medium and then I'll add large. So on medium in the new size, scroll down, click on add new size. And then finally, the last one I'll add is large. Then I'll scroll down and click on add new size. Once all the values for your attribute have been created, now we can start using this pre-created attribute and values for all of the products within our store that would require this same attribute and values. So let's go back to our product that we were working on, the artistic round lamps, and I'll show you how we can apply this right now. So going back to the left-hand side, I'm going to click on Products. Then here under Artistic Round Lamps, I'm going to click on Edit to edit this product. Then scrolling down to the Product Data section, I'm going to go to Attributes by clicking on Attributes to edit the product. And here now we see it says Custom Product Attribute. And when I click on this, here we have the pre-created attribute that we just created in the previous step. So I'm going to click on that and then I'm going to click on Add. And then here we see all the different values that we need to select. It says Select Terms. When I click on this button though, Select All, then all of the pre-created values for this particular attribute will be populated in this box. So this is just a really quick way to save time across all your different products if your many products share the same attribute and values. Also note that here in the values box, if you want to remove one of these for this particular product, you can do so. So if I want to remove the medium, I'm just going to click the X right here to remove that. So now I have two values of small and large. Next, I want to make these visible on the product page. So I'm going to click on this box right here. And I do want to use these for variations. So I'm going to click on that box right there. Then I'm going to click on Save Attributes to save the attributes. In addition to adding an attribute of size, I also want to add an attribute of color for this particular product. So down below, instead of adding Custom Product Attribute this time, I'm simply going to click the Add button to create a unique attribute. And here for the name, I'm going to call this color. Then here for the values, as it notes, enter some text or some attributes and make sure that you separate them with this pipe symbol. It looks like an L, but it's actually on the right hand side of your keyboard above the Enter key. When you hold down your Shift key, you will find that little pipe symbol right there. So I'm going to create a value of a white lamp as well as a red lamp. So I've got two different values here for the color, white and red, separated by this line here, which is like a pipe symbol. Then once again on the left hand side, I'm going to make these visible on the product page and use them for variations. So I'm going to click both of these boxes. Then I'm going to click on Save Attributes to save the attributes. Once attributes have been saved, then we can move on to variations where we can set the price for the different variations of this product. So I'm going to click on Variations, and here we can see at the top we can choose a field to bulk edit. So I'm not going to use this, but I just want to point out that if you'd like to bulk edit your variations, you can do so by clicking on that box and then choosing one of the options from this drop-down box. Instead, I'm just going to click on this box on the right-hand side that says Add Variation. Once I click on the Add Variations button, then we'll see this new box that pops up where I can choose the size and the color, and I can create my variations down below. So keeping in mind that I have two different variations of this lamp, I have a small lamp and a large lamp. Naturally, I want the small lamp to be less expensive than the large lamp. So for any size here, I'm going to click on this and I'm going to click on small, and then I'll create the price variation for the small lamp. So here where it says regular price, I'm going to add the price of $400. Then I'm going to scroll down, and here where it says Add Variation, I'm going to click this one more time because I want to create a variation for the large lamp as well. So we have the small lamp as 400, that looks good. Here I'm going to click on any size one more time, click on large, and then I'll set the large price variation to be $800. So it's twice the amount as the small lamp. Then finally at the bottom, I'm going to choose the default size and color, which will direct my visitor to the product that I want them to really focus on. So here for the default size, I'll click on small, and for the default color, I'll click on red. And then once all of that has been set, I'll scroll up to the top and I'll click on Publish to publish my new product with the variations. Once the product has been published, you can either click on this link at the top that says View Product, or you can click on this button right here. So I'm going to click on View Product right here to check it out. And here on the product page, we see the product title, Artistic Round Lamps. We can see the price range. Then we can see the default here. The size is small and the color is red. And when I click on this one and I choose large, for example, here we see down below we have the 400 because we're on the small. But when I click on large, then we'll see that it will change to $800. Down below, we can see other information about the product, including the product description, additional information, and if there's any reviews, you'll see those here as well. So one thing I want to point out, when we hover over the image and click on it, then it opens up to a really nice lightbox display, and you can see the product a lot easier. I want to show you, though, how to add additional images to the product gallery. So to add additional images to the product gallery, once again, I'm going to go up to the top, click on Edit Product. Then on the right-hand side, I'm going to scroll down, and here we can see there's a product gallery. So I'm going to add product gallery images by clicking on this link. Then I'm going to click on Upload Files and select Files. Then the two images I want to display are the white and the red artistic lamp. So I'm going to highlight both of those images and click on Open. Once images have been uploaded to your WordPress website, then you can add a title and an alternative text as we did in the previous image example. So I'm just going to add a title and an alternative text for both of these new images. Then I'm going to hold down the Command key on my Mac to select both of these images. Now we can see they're both checked right here. Then I'm going to click on Add to Gallery to add both of these images to the product gallery. Here we see them right here. Then I'm just going to scroll up to the top and click on Update. Once the product has been updated, then I'm going to view the product by clicking on View Product. And now we can see we have the main product images with two product images in the gallery down below. So now when I click on this image, once again it opens up into a really cool lightbox display, and there are these arrows here, which when I click on them I can see the other variations. So that's how you add additional product images to your product gallery. In this video, I've shown you how to create a simple product as well as a variable product with different attributes and variations. I'm going to continue behind the scenes following the same steps we took in the previous two examples to add more products, more simple products and variable products to my shop page right here. Then I'll join you on the other side when I've added those products and we can clean up the formatting and display issues we see here on the shop page. So here we are back on my shop page, and we can see that I've added additional products to my catalog following the steps in the previous examples where we went over how to create a simple product as well as a variable product. So I simply replicated those steps and added these additional products to the catalog. Now note that when we're looking at these, now we have 4 products going across, and these thumbnail images, these small images, are very small. I'd much prefer them to be larger, and instead of having 4 products going across, I prefer to have only 3 products. So in order to change the number of products that show up on a single row within WooCommerce, we're going to be adding another plugin to our WooCommerce WordPress website, so that when we're done, the end result will look something like this with 3 products going across, and the images will be much larger. This is a much better display than the current display we have with 4 smaller images going across. So to add that plugin, I'm going to go up to the top, click on Dashboard. Then I'm going to go down to Plugins, hover over Plugins, and click on Add New. Here on the Install Plugin screen, I'm going to do a search for the WooCommerce Product Archive Customizer plugin. So I'm going to add that here in the search box. Then I'm going to click on Search Plugins. Here we see it at the top, the WooCommerce Product Archive Customizer. I'm going to install this by clicking on Install Now. Are you sure you want to install this? Yes, okay. And once the plugin has been successfully installed, I'm going to activate it by clicking on Activate Plugin. Once the plugin has been activated, then we can go configure those settings by going to WooCommerce Settings. Then here in the Product tab, I'm going to click on Products. And now we'll have additional product settings related to our product archive. So now we see we can toggle the display of various components on product archives, and we can change the product layout. So right now, the product column default shows 4, which is the current display that we have. I want to make this 3 instead. Here you can increase the number of products that display per page, so I'll just increase this to 50. I only have 9 products right now, but when I add more products, those will be displayed on the same page. Then I'm just going to scroll down, leave everything else as it is. Then I'm going to click on Save Changes to save my changes. Now when I go back to the site by clicking on Visit Site, and then I click on the shop page. Now we see we have 3 items going across, which is a lot better, I think. It spaces out all the buttons so that they're not on top of one another, and the image is a little bit larger than it was in the previous view with 4 items going across. So that's how you can change the number of items that display on each row within WooCommerce. So now that we have all the products added to our online store, the next step is I want to change the styles on this particular website. So note that it's green right here for the price, and I'd like it to match the rest of the site, which is orange. The other thing is that when we hover on top of this particular item, as well as any item for that matter, it also turns green, and I want that to be underlined instead of green. So first step is we need to open up Inspect Elements to find out this particular color code. So I'm just going to hold down the Control key on my Mac and click on the mouse. Then I'm going to open Inspect Elements by clicking on Inspect Element. Here we see on the right hand side, we can see that the price color is this green. So I'm just going to click on this, and then I'm going to change it from green to orange. And then I'm going to highlight all of this, highlight it and copy it. I'm going to close Inspect Elements, and then I'm going to go back to my dashboard by clicking on Dashboard. I'm going to go down to Appearance and Editor, and then I'm going to open up Custom.css, and then I'm going to scroll to the bottom and I'm going to paste the code that I just copied in the previous step, making sure that I close it off with a closing bracket. Then I'm going to click on Update File to update the file. Now going back to the site, I'm going to click on Visit Site and go to the shop page. And now we see that the prices are now all orange and it matches the rest of the site. Note that when I hover over this particular title though, it still turns green. So once again, I'm going to open up Inspect Elements by holding down the Control key on my Mac and clicking the mouse. Then I'm going to click on Inspect Elements. And once again, here we can see the HTML on the left-hand side and the CSS styles on the right. So the one that we want is the link code, which starts with Ahref. So I'm going to click on that. And then here on the right-hand side, you can see that the hover code is set as green. So we actually want to change this hover code so that it's orange. So on the right-hand side, I'm just going to click on this box right here, and then I'm going to paste in the orange code. Then I'm going to highlight and copy all of this code right here, A:hover. I'm going to highlight all of that and copy it. Close Inspect Elements, go back to the dashboard, scroll down to Appearance, hover over Appearance, and then click on Editor. Then I'll click on Custom.css, scroll to the bottom, and paste the code that I just copied in the previous step. Then I'm going to click on Update File to update the file. Now when I go to the site by clicking on Visit Site, and then I go to the shop page, now we can see that the product title as well as the price are orange. Now clicking on one of these items, I'm going to click on this one here. The other thing that we still need to change is that here we see that the button is purple. I'd prefer it to be orange to match the other buttons on the page, and we still see that we also need to change the price on the product page. So starting with the button, I'm going to hover over this item, click on the Control key on my Mac and click on the mouse. Then I'm going to open up Inspect Elements, and here we can see on the right hand side all the purple code that's creating this purple button. So I'm just going to replace each of these purple codes with my orange code right here. Then once I've changed the purple to the orange within Inspect Elements, I'm going to copy all of this code, highlight it and copy it. Close Inspect Elements, go back to the dashboard, scroll down to Appearance, hover over Appearance and click on Editor. Then I'll click on Custom.css, and once again I'm going to paste the code that I just copied in the previous step, making sure that I close it off with a closing bracket. Then I'm going to click on Update File to update the file. Now when I go back to the site by clicking on Visit Site, and I go to the shop page and click on the item, now we see that the button is orange, and that matches so much better with the other elements on the page. Last but not least, I want to change this color of this green price to orange. So I'm going to hold down the Control key on my Mac, click the mouse, click on Inspect Elements. And here on the right hand side we can see the green style that is generating that price. So I'm just going to override the green and make it orange. Then once again I'm going to highlight all of this code right here, highlight it and copy it, close Inspect Elements, go back to the dashboard, scroll down to Appearance, click on Editor, then I'll click on Custom.css and paste the code that I just copied in the previous step, making sure that I close it with a closing bracket. Then I'll click on Update File to update the file. Now when I go back to the site by clicking on Visit Site, and then I click on Shop, now when I click on that product, now we see that the price is in orange and the button is in orange as well. So that looks so much better. So this is how you add products to your WordPress e-commerce website, and you can customize WooCommerce. Thank you so much everyone for watching, and if you send in a question asking how to add e-commerce to your Genesis Child theme, thank you so much for providing the inspiration for this video. I hope this video was helpful to all of you. If it was, please feel free to leave a comment below, like the video, and share this video with your friends. I will be coming out with more videos related to WordPress, Genesis, and how to build your business on the web, so please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Last but not least, all the conversation continues on my website at 77webstudio.com, so feel free to head on over to my website to continue the conversation. Until next time, I hope you have a great week and continue learning new skills that help you to build your business on the web.